guy's been here before, and it's always put on an enjoyable show. Wait. What? Wait, okay, wait. That's a big wait. We're waiting for the party to turn the volume up.
What's wrong with that?
Is it hot in here? Do we know what the air conditioning is? Yeah. Air conditioning? Raise your hands for air conditioning. Raise your hands for no air conditioning. Air conditioning wins. I guess I'll turn it on when I get done. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. Once again, another hot act here at MI. This guy's been here before. He's put on a pretty incredible show each time. Once again, I'm sure he's going to dazzle and amaze you once again tonight. Some of the recent endeavors of this person, he's got an album out right now called Present for the Future. I'm going to read this off my note sheet. He's got a new Chick Corea album coming out called Eye of the Beholder. He is featured on the cover of the cover story of the most recent guitar player this month. He's going to be a columnist in the upcoming Guitar World. Is that right? Yeah, I got that right. He says he has small feet. Please welcome Frank Gambale.
That's how I suggest you look at them. Because I found with modes, it was that the intensity of study of just major scales like that in all their inversions that really opened up this whole fretboard for me. And even if it doesn't sink in, there's a lot of work here actually involved in major scales. And if it doesn't sink in today, that's fine, because I found that I was teaching this particular approach to modes when I was teaching here, and some people would get it right away, and other people would tackle me in the lunchroom or something, say, after 6 months, and say, I finally got it. Yeah, I got it. So everybody learns at their own pace. Deal with a couple of modes at a time. You don't have to go headlong into all of them. You're itching for a question there, yeah. You can try with anything. He said, did I always try with the 4th and 5th chord? I found that that was a good choice because it really outlined the key shape, the key center. I'm not saying that that's a rule. You know, you have to break rules, unfortunately, to come up with new stuff. My whole picking approach is breaking rules. You know? As long as you don't hurt anybody, I keep saying that. Because, you know, I mean, even though, like, the most traditional things are good to a point, you know, there's certain things that just don't work anymore. And the way that guitar is going, it's evolving so rapidly. You know, just to get your own voice out there on guitar, you really have to think for yourself. You really have to go, well, that's not the right way to do it, but it's a good way to do it, or it's an alternative, or it's something that's going to make me sound a little different. And you know, you got all sorts of guys out there playing with 2 guitars, and you don't have to go that far. You can still make a lot of sense on one guitar. Yes? How did I say about using the 4th and 5th?
What other things can you do for other scales to get the sounds of different things that we're learning more into our head?
Well, you take a similar approach. He said, how do you get the other scales working in the same way? And if you were to work with Harmonic Minor, for example, try and find 2 chords from that scale that are going to outline the sound of that chord. What 2 chords do you think would work really well as an outline for those 2 chords? 2 scales, or 1 scale. Whew. There's a couple of ways to do it, huh? 2 dominant chords, no. You're thinking melodic minor. Harmonic minor, you could use the 4 and 5 chord, 4 minor and 5 major, right? Or you could use the 6th degree and 5th degree triads. You know, in key of A minor harmonic, you'd have E and F triads. That would really specifically outline that sound. There's lots of ways to do it. If you think about something that makes it uniquely that scale, You need to look at the formula. Like for harmonic minor, you go 1, flat, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, natural 7. Now that interval skip of flat 6 to a natural 7 is a minor third interval. That is a particularly unique character to that scale. So whatever voicings you use, whichever harmonized chords you come up with, have to include that interval somewhere for it to be the sound of that scale. So, any other questions? I got one more piece to play for you. It's a piece from my new record. Has anybody seen or heard my records before? Oh, a few people, that's great. Thanks. Yes. Superlocrian. That's the one Superman uses. What? Yeah, there's also super duper locrian as well. No, actually, super locrian is mode 7 of harmonic minor. And that's what you play on altered chords, these guys. So on an E7 sharp 9, you play E super locrian, which is the 7th mode of F melodic minor. You can see it as F melodic minor as well. Yes, any questions about like Chick Corea or any of the people I'm working with now? Or how did I get to this position? No? Use your imaginations here, folks. Hello?
How did you get this?
Good question. Heck if I know. You know, unfortunately, there's no substitute for hard work, of course, but while I was here, I was really active. Not only within the classroom thing, you know, getting bands together amongst students and really learning. You can learn a lot of different crafts while you're here if you are determined enough. You know, this was a great opportunity when I came here. I wanted to take time out and just practice. I was really devoting a whole year of my life to getting better. I wanted to get better than the average, you know. So, you know, make sure that you use your time here effectively. Don't sit around and practice things that you already know. Go do some bizarre things, like sit in a class where it's something that might not particularly be your bag of tricks. You know, like if you're a metal guitarist, go sit in with a jazz teacher and try and get something from this. If you're a jazz player, try and mingle with the rock guys as well, and just try and, I mean, we're all playing guitars, and the type of music is really superfluous. It doesn't matter. And it's amazing when you start crossing and mixing those elements. That's how you get a lot of different stuff happening. So, you know, you can learn something from everybody, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So, the way that I got around in this town was putting a band together. I mean, this sounds obvious, but put a band together of some kind. If you've got original material, it's a struggle in this town. You have to find ways and means of supporting yourself while you're here. Luckily, I was teaching here for a while, supported my nut for a while. Until, you know, if you're playing out there, then you're in a much higher visibility situation. And you can capitalize on that by inviting record companies or whatever, people that you want to hear you down to these clubs. It's, you know, if you hit 15 people and you want, if one of those 15 people come, there's an opportunity, a possible opportunity. You've got to be persistent. That's the thing. You really have to be determined and persistent. Just get out there and play and expose yourself to it. Doesn't sound too good. Play for as many people as you can. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, down the back there. Anyone? No? No? He was yawning. Yes?
We were going to make modes. We were going to make modes on a harmonic minor scale. How would we approach that?
Exactly the same way. Take a harmonic minor scale and start every degree of this, every mode of the scale on the same note, and figure out the formulas. I've already done that in my books, the technique book that I have out. The part 2, which is coming out really shortly, is covers harmonic minor scale approaches as well. Well, I guess they have a bookstore here, right? I should have the first technique book there, and the second one will be out shortly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my technique is pretty much covered in the speed picking book, and I'm also doing a speed picking video very shortly for DCI. So that's going to have all my tricks on there. At least one or two of them anyway. I can only give away so much. Actually, you probably already know what I do by now. Yes. Have I done any solo albums? Yeah, I've done 2 solo albums. This man says they're good albums, and I believe him. One's called Brave New Guitar, and the new one, which is out in the stores now, is called A Present for the Future. And I also have worked on several other records, a couple of Chick Corea records. There's a live one. Has anybody heard the live one we did in Japan last year? Yeah, there's a few people. It's called GRP Super Live. There's some burning stuff on there. There's a new Chick album coming out next week, which is going to win a Grammy Award, I'm sure. The last one we did was nominated for a Grammy. This one's going to win it. It's called Eye of the Beholder, and it's monstrous. Yeah. He said, are we going for a lot more? Yes. I'm featured pretty heavily on this record. It's great. Should give me some space for a change. In fact, the whole band sounds a lot better on this record because we played it live in the studio. Everything you hear was played live instead of overdub city. I'm really getting tired of overdubs. You know, and it's like you might as well program a computer. You get a much better vibe when you're interacting with musicians in a live situation. You know, if you play something now with somebody else interacting directly with you when it goes down to tape, then that's better than having somebody play by themselves and then you sort of overlay on top. You don't get any of the natural spontaneity that happens. That's just my opinion. Hi. Yes, when I do my arpeggios. G over A to A7. Yeah. Well, there can be a number of things I'm doing. Well, just to use G triad and A triad. The whole secret to this technique is muting. I think that's the most important thing about it. See, a lot of people say, oh yeah man, I sweep. And you hear him do a sweep and he goes, you hear the first note, the last note, everything in between is like mush. It's funny, I saw a videotape actually just recently. See, when I decided to do a video for these companies, and I got inundated by tapes from all these various companies wanting me to do a video. I don't know, has anybody seen any of these videos yet? Anybody's seen, I won't mention any names, but there's some videos in it. Has anybody seen any of those? Somebody said they've seen them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really lame stuff out there. My goodness. I couldn't believe how. I mean, these so-called advanced guitar videos are laughable. I mean, people mumbling their way about the video, you know. It's kind of weird. I mean, guys that go to GIT know a lot more, technically speaking, than these guys run video. So it's hard. I wonder what people get out of it, you know. But anyway, there was a guy that did some sweeping, and I couldn't help being amused because he completely flooded. He was doing that example that I just gave, not the same example, but the example of the flopping. It was right there on tape 3 times in a row. I couldn't believe that. So if you're going to do this technique, take it very seriously because it's not easy to do. It looks easy, but it takes a long time to get it articulated right. And a lot of it has to do with the muting. Make sure that you can hear every note. Every note. Yeah.
Are you muting the other strings, the ones you're not playing at the time? Is that what you're saying?
I can't hear you.
Are you muting all the strings, even the ones you're playing?
No. Yes, actually, I guess I am. He asked me, am I muting all the strings or just the ones I'm playing? I've come up with this really weird mute technique, and a lot of it is the left hand. And the more I think about it, the more important I think it is. And it's basically, I'll show you with a scale. It's easier to show you with a scale type thing. So when I'm playing on the low E string, I don't need to mute. Everything under, actually the first finger becomes a mute. I have a callus that goes down to about here on this finger. It's like an occupational hazard. But, so when I'm on the low E string, I don't even need a right hand mute. Everything under that finger is muted by the first finger, right? So when I get to the A string, first finger is still doing everything. I end up using the tip of this finger for the low E string, and underneath it is muting everything else, right? So it's not until I get to the D string where I'm muting the A string and everything under it. That's where the palm comes in, mutes the low E string, right? And it follows that pattern. When I get to the G string, the strings under it are muted by the first finger, or the adjacent string, the D string in this case, is muted by the first finger, and the palm takes over 2 strings. See, what I prefer when I play is more of a legato sound, which means you have to let the notes ring absolutely as long as they can before the next note sounds. Instead of like this the choking type, where you mute everything as it's played. I never liked the sound of that too much because it's if you listen to it sometimes it just sounds like a machine gun, which is a great effect, but to my ear I heard more attack of the note. It's the attack that's more intense at that point. So I like the legato sound better. So that meant letting the notes ring. And consequently, it's a lot harder to do because you have to actually let the notes ring before you mute them. Instead of, you don't have to have much technique to mute everything as you play it, you know, because it's all squashed before it even comes out. Yeah?
When you're practicing, what would you be doing different if you're practicing that scale, different from somebody who mutes it? I mean, who plays a staccato like that?
What would I be doing that's different?
Yeah.
In what context?
To make it sound legato rather than like a machine gun.
What do I do to make it sound? I just explained it. You let the notes ring before you. Instead of muting them as they come out, you let them ring. Does that make sense? Any other questions before I play some? Yeah. He said for my major scales, do I try and do 3 notes per string? Yes. Yes, that's much more consistent than the standard patterns I find. You know, what I was saying before about breaking the rules, that arpeggio shape, It's my most fundamental. It's the first arpeggio shape in my speed picking book, which is this one I played before. Now it's amazing that I came up with that by breaking the rules of the standard. Everybody knows this guy, right? I hate to say this in a school like this, but I think that's a really hopeless arpeggio shape. It's practical in the sense that it's all within 4 frets and it's very comfortable, but in terms of getting it up to any kind of speed, you're going to be hard pressed. Especially with alternate. It's a mess. And all I did was change one note. That's not much to do really when you think about it. If you can change one note, it makes the whole universe open up to you, then consider it, because all I did was took the 5th off the A string. Instead of put it over here on the D string. So I get a sweep going. Everything else is exactly the same. Except I broke another rule. On the top I only played 2 notes. Left out a note. I don't go. I don't go. I go. I left out a note, right? So who's gonna slap me on the wrist at 5,000 miles an hour and say, you left a note out on the top of that? I heard that. When you hear it like this. Do you notice a note missing? I got it. Hell, if I can notice it missing. So you kind of have to, use what's there. It's all great. Information is information. It's all useful. But, don't just stay with that. Use your imagination. Expand on things. Yeah, you had a question.
Is your front arpeggios in those books too?
Yeah. Yes.
How about your equipment setup? What are you using?
What am I using equipment-wise? I'm using an amplifier that I've just fallen in love with recently for this week. No, actually, I'm sticking with this one for a while. It's called a Boogie 50 caliber, and it sounds entirely different to the rest of the Boogie range. Entirely different. And you're going to see an ad with me in it next issue of Guitar Player. This 50 caliber was really good. Yeah, I never thought I'd be doing ads either, let alone the cover of Guitar Player. It's wild, man. It took me 22 years to be an overnight success. Think about that. So, now it's all happening. Boy, when it happens, boom, it happens pretty quickly, so just be ready. Any other questions? Yeah. Use a heavy pick, this big fat triangle thing, bass pick. I think I'm the only person in the universe that uses these picks. I like them because, do you have a standard pick? Anybody have a regular pick? I'll show you why I like them. See, when I'm gliding over strings like this all the time, I think there's as little resistance as possible. If you were to compare, it's going to be hard to see from a distance, but if you compare the angle of these tips together, you'll find that this other tip is way smoother, much rounder than the standard pick tip. I get caught up in these guys all the time, whereas these are rounder. Plus, you get 3 picks for the price of 1. What a bargain. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, that's right. Thank you. How did I get on the picks before I got into effects? Okay, 50 caliber head, and right now I'm not into this mission control 65-foot rack, only because I can't afford it. But besides that, whenever I hear somebody with 6 million effect units, all I still hear is chorus and reverb, and a couple of octave things here and there, but realistically, how much better is that system to... I mean, I'm getting as basic as I can get nowadays. I like to use, I just got a reverb, actually 2 reverb units. I got the HDR 1000 stereo Ibanez reverb, and I have an SPX 90, which is a multi-effect unit, which is good for a lot of different things, and a noise reducer. That's it. The hush tube. Yeah, I'm not running stereo today, but I do check. So, I mean, that could be more basic. 2 effects. I like to have less stuff in between my guitar and my speakers, you know, just a nice bit of reverb for solo, and a bit of chorus on clean sounds, and a bit of slap, maybe, 50 milliseconds or something, and just using a Boss volume pedal, stereo volume pedal, and a Boss tuner, and this little guy, this is useful, little IFC 60-foot controller here for MIDI effects, made by Ibanez. No questions about my guitar? Yeah. Volume pedal is before the effects and after, in the loop. That way you can swell, reverb things, and the reverb will catch it, and then you can bring something else in, and the reverb will. Now, having the volume pedal before the effects and in the loop means that you can have crunch chords at any volume, or crunch solo sound at a really tiny volume if you want. Any other questions? Yes. Tell us about a tour with Chick Corea in Europe. Well, you know, that was one of the best things about being in a band like this last year was the touring and seeing the world. We went to Japan and Europe and South America. Great fun. In fact, it's wild because Chick is 50 times bigger than he is over here in South America. In South America, we played in a city called San Paulo, which is like about the same size as New York City, about 10 or 12 million people, a huge place. And we played in the Central Park, which is like Manhattan Central Park. And we played for 80,000 people. It was nuts. We had police escorts, and I was practicing my wave. It's a wild sensation. But for a jazz artist, which blew me away, man, makes me want to move to Rio, because they have such a sophisticated ear in South America. It's amazing. The music that they hear and feel, and what they consider pop, is jazz to me. You know? So it's a whole other thing. It's great to experience a culture like that, where you know, their idea of pop is not what the Americans consider pop. You know, it's just another slant on things. It was interesting and eye-opening experience. And Japan was wild too. Yeah, how many people have actually traveled to a foreign country where they don't speak the language? Have you done that? Isn't that a weird thing? Like being in Fukuoka in Japan, which is right down south of Japan, where even the locals, it's so local that they don't really speak much English, or any English. So it's really wild walking down the street. You can't even, you know, it's all hand signals and stuff. It's kind of wild. So that's one of the, you keep practicing and you'll get into a touring band and you'll see the world for free. Way to go. But it's not all glamour. A lot of hard work, a lot of traveling. You know, so many plane flights that when I'd get home to my hotel room and I'd lie in the bed, I still felt my phone was all going like this all the time. Nothing felt solid. Yeah. Other gripes about the road? Let's see. Well, it depends how you travel. Luckily with Chick, it's a great, we travel about as good as you can go. when we go long distances from like LA to Japan, we fly first class, and we stay in great hotels, and money's pretty good. The gripes would come from if you, like I did a tour last year, which was ultra low budget with Steve Smith from Vital Information and Journey and all that. And there were 6 of us in a Ford Aerostar right throughout the States for 2 months. Now that was a rigorous tour. I mean, when you have to drive in a van for 10 hours to get halfway there, it's pretty weird. And so I saw a lot of the States. That was great. I saw a lot of the States. It's a great country. It's big. It's the same size as Australia, but I never drove across Australia. Yeah. No, I'm getting looking at making me a switch of controls, MIDI and everything else. Hopefully before I go out on the road. Actually, we're playing in town with Chick very shortly. There's the Chick Courier Electric Band, and there's Herbie Hancock, thank you, featuring Michael Brecker. We're playing at the Greek Theatre. I think it's on the 9th of June, something like that. And I think we're playing also at the Pacific Amphitheater in Santa Barbara. So, a couple of gigs in this area. Should be pretty smoking. And my band is playing tomorrow night too at the cafe if anybody's interested. It's a small club on the Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks. It's called Le Cafe. Le Cafe. And we play live music. We play French music. No, we don't. Just kidding. Yes?
What about the period when you were teaching here at the school? Were you putting the band together at the same time?
Yes. He asked me when I was teaching here, was I playing at the same time? Absolutely. I was a playaholic.
Were you putting a band together? Putting a band together, and then you were playing out?
Yeah. My first band had Dan Gilbert and Takashi. Is Taka still teaching? Yeah. And a bass player who was in my class, who still works with me on bands on both my records, Steve Kushiznik. And another graduate, Ian Scott, and we had a monster 3-guitar band, because I didn't know any keyboard players or sax players, so we had this 3-guitar band. It was pretty different. Actually sounded quite good. We had a lot of gigs around town. It was fun. So, I mean, even if you don't have access to other instruments, if you're seeking other instruments, I mean, there's such a resource here. Look how many people, look how many guitarists that are into music in this building. You know, if you can't find 2 people that you want to play with, there's something wrong. Put something together. Get a tape happening. Do a session. Do a recording session. This is one thing that surprises me. When I first got the audition for Chick, when I first heard about it, ultimately there was about 100 people that auditioned and not auditioned, but sent material to Chick. But the very day that I heard about this audition, the next day I had on Chick's office desk, Federal Express, were copies of both my albums and cassette versions of both my albums, a videotape of my band live, a resume, photograph. I mean, they were flabbergasted because nobody else did that. Nobody else, and the tapes kind of went dribbling in one at a time when people heard about it. We all heard about it about the same time. But, an opportunity like that comes once, maybe twice in a lifetime. And if it happens to you, make sure you grab it. Because these opportunities only happen a couple of times. So you really got to, if you want to, go for it, man. If there's a band that you see that you've got your mind on, if you wanted to play with Earth, Wind & Fire or Shaka Khan or something, there's people, a lot of them live either here or in New York. A lot of bands live here. So if you work your way into the scene, you can sort of hear about auditions and try and hustle your way to an audition. But make sure you're ready to do the gig. Well, I've been playing around town so much. I was out on the road with Jean-Luc Ponty when Scott Henderson first left. There was another guitar player that joined, Jamie Glazer, who's now with Jean-Luc Ponty. At the time I was with Jean-Luc on the road, so I kind of missed the first audition, so I was thoroughly crushed, because I wanted the gig for Czech, you know. But Scott recommended me then, and plus people had heard about me around town, and I'd just done Jack the Lens puppet record at Mad Hatter, which is Chick's studio. So I happened to meet Chick's PR girl at the studio. She also booked the studio. So it's kind of, if you're out there doing projects, you always connect with people. It's a very small network in this town. You're surprised. So, yeah.
How are you learning to check, or what kind of skills are you using?
Well, that's another thing about not only playing with your own group around town, but also getting gigs with other musicians and doing their repertoires. At one point last year, or the year before, I was trying to struggle with about 5 different repertoires. I had Bonnie Brunel's repertoire, Chick's repertoire, Potty's repertoire, and a few other bands. You know, I want you, when you're learning this music all the time, I'm a pretty average to poor reader, so I need to spend time